Let's get this started. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many of you taking time out to join us today. Welcome to CiC's second session in our physical health webinar series running throughout the autumn and winter months. My name is Jake Joyce. I am the physical wellbeing stream lead here at CiC, and we are thrilled to continue the series today with a session focused on getting us moving and forming habits. Our host for these live sessions is Grant. So without stealing too much of his intro, Grant is a seasoned strength and conditioning coach with over 23 years of experience. His background in rehabilitation, athletic performance, and prehabilitation makes him an expert in the field. Grant has dedicated the majority of his professional life to assisting others in achieving their optimal physical health. So the aim for this session is to be as interactive as possible. We invite you to use the chat function and introduce yourselves where you've come from. Comments, any posts or questions that you have are also encouraged throughout the webinar. And we have set a good amount of time aside at the end of the session for Grant to respond to all of your questions and comments. I would also like to add this to the session now that it is being recorded. So if you would like to watch it back for yourself, or if you do have any colleagues that were unable to attend but would like to watch the webinar, please do let them know. And then without further ado, I will start the recording and hand you over to Grant to get the session started.
Hello again. Hopefully most of you were here for my first webinar, which was last month. If not, do not worry. I'm going to give a brief overview of what we did last time, and then we'll crack on. I think the big thing I want to say is my purpose here is to help you individually. We've got a lot of things in common. I'm going to share some things from my experiences. What I will say is, as I said, from Jake said, I've been a coach for 23 years now, and we are, myself and 5 other coaches run a gym in Glasgow, Scotland, which has been really, really successful. Individually, I lived 10 years in Austria, where I worked with the Olympic ski team doing their strength and conditioning. So I got a lot of my education from there. And then once I actually got back to the UK, I really focused on helping folk who had chronic pains and had gone maybe through the NHS and had no success, and were really in a lost kind of cause position. And what I felt was, I know from my own kind of knowledge and experience, was I love problem solving and trying to find solutions, especially when it comes to the physical side. Today we are going to be looking at 2 things. We're going to have a brief overview of what we covered last time. And for me, I want to kind of go to the beginning of what is exercise and how can we implement it into our daily lifestyles and make it part of the norm. I feel what holds people back is they have so many options that they look at, and it becomes really overwhelming. We also looked at the last webinar a little bit on the mentality that goes through people and what they're influenced by. I'm kind of here just to really steady the ship and hopefully provide a foundation for you to build on. This is going to be used for absolutely everybody. It really doesn't matter if you're doing triathlons or you don't exercise at all. This is going to be a great source of information for you. Hopefully I can, open your eyes a little bit in a positive sense. This is what it's about. Bring a little bit of reality, but positivity with today's presentation. Last time we really just went over the kind of 4 foundations of what makes up exercise. We can kind of stereotype a lot of exercises in our head, and quite often we fundamentally look at exercise to a preference or a particular body type, where realistically we want to try and implement each of these elements, aerobic, strength, stability and mobility, into our life, but do it in a way that is reasonable and sustainable for the individual. Now, these 4 elements all have a real importance to your daily life, and really what we looked at and looking at the exercise benefits and everything that can come with it, I immediately always want to look at health benefits first, more than anything. The health benefits, especially associated, or the health risks associated around sedentary lifestyles and behavior. So sedentary behavior is if you're being seated for 6 hours or more a day, which I think is the majority of people. It's probably especially today if you do work behind a computer. There's massive health implications. It can absolutely increase your chances of heart disease and cancers, diabetes, and obviously a lot of physical imbalances, which can lead to chronic pains. When you actually look at the NHS statistics, the problem I kind of saw was they give the correct advice, but it becomes very overwhelming, especially if you're somebody that doesn't exercise. And their advice is 150 minutes of exercise per week and 2 hours of strength work. Now, for somebody that doesn't exercise at all, that is a lot. And then it also becomes a bit of a maze, a bit of a labyrinth of how do I even do that? How do I fit that into my already busy lifestyle? So the second part of today's session is really going to look at forming habits and where do we start with that? Now, coming off the last webinar, we're going to look next at the different places that you can train. So don't worry, again, when I go through this, initially, I'm just trying to create an understanding of the pros and cons of different places to exercise. And what I want you to do while I'm doing this is just see where you find and draw your own comfort level from. You can even think about places you've been before, and find what would work best for you individually. And there's plenty of options here. So the first thing that we're going to look at is commercial gyms, which are generally the scary place for most people to go, but is the most common place to train, to exercise. And that is because they're cost effective nowadays, especially with commercial gyms. You get a lot of places that do maybe £15, £20 a month. So full access, and you can go to your big group classes. They're pretty well equipped, but for me, they can be really daunting. Even at myself, that's been training for over 20 years. If I go into a gym I've never been in before, I can actually be a bit, it takes me a little while to get comfortable with the environment, and I know what I'm doing. So I can't imagine what that's like for somebody who doesn't exercise or is completely new to a gym. Walking in, it will feel like that everybody is staring at you. It can be off-putting. Rest assured, majority of the time that's not the truth. They can be really friendly environments, but you will feel fairly isolated when you're in there unless you're going with friends, or you create friendships within maybe classes that you're going to. The other kind of negative, I'd say, with a lot of times within commercial gyms themselves is there's a real lack of guidance to what to do. You can walk in and there's all this cardio equipment, and there's the weight room, which can be quite a scary place to go if you don't know what you're doing. You're scared of hurting yourself. You're worried that you're going to make a fool of yourself. But they are very well equipped if you do have the knowledge of what to do. Now, looking at the next type of place to go, we're going to look at our, let's see if it comes up, is the small group gym. And this is kind of more of a recent phenomena. My gym is a small group gym, and I feel, for me, this is a great place if you're someone that needs constant motivation, where you can have a little bit of adherence, that somebody's looking over you, making sure you're doing the right things, that you're not going to hurt yourself. There's different types of small group gyms. I would certainly be mindful of that. My small gym group is a very community-driven project, so it doesn't matter what your fitness level or skill level is. We're all in this together, essentially. So you do get that community feel. You do have the accountability. What I would say is it's definitely a lot more expensive than a commercial gym. So it is that case of you need to be sure, especially if you're watching your money, that you can afford to go into it. For instance, like an average price per month would be about £100 to have unlimited access to a small group gym, approximately. That's Glasgow pricing. I don't know what it'd be wherever you are. But what it does do is it introduces you to a lot of maybe styles of exercise you've not done before. And there's usually a lot of accessibility, but it is a little bit more expensive. And doesn't maybe have the other amenities that you get with a commercial gym, swimming pools, your cafe, etc. So that's small group gyms. Moving on, personal training, which is obviously what I do. Now, what I would say is I'd like to always differentiate personal training and coaching. I'd always call myself a coach over a personal trainer. The reason I kind of say that is I think there's can be a negative stigma with personal trainers that were, military camp leaders that were going to shout at you and be drill sergeants. But actually, personally, a really good coach should be educating you constantly, should be building up your own self-confidence, give you self-belief, create an understanding. Where you're going to get the biggest benefit with personal training is you're going to get to whatever your targets are a lot quicker. And I think most importantly is you can create a really healthy relationship where you can trust somebody, talk to them, and create, a lot of progress in a very short period of time. What I would say is you need to do your research. I think a lot of times is making sure that you're finding a trainer who has a lot of good recommendations. Be careful of maybe people that are trying to sell the dream in a very short period of time. We're in this for the long haul. You should be working on building this into a habit and a routine. Just the negative I would certainly say behind personal training is it's not cheap. That's the truth of it. It can be very expensive. It can be worked hand in hand with your gym routine. But it's something where I'd always say it's worth, if you're completely new and you do want to get into training, it's worth even sitting down with a personal trainer to one-to-one just to get a feel for it. Same for the gyms. You can always go and try these gyms, normally free of charge, to find what's going to work best for you. Going on to kind of the last one is we're looking at the online coaching, which is, again, I think post-COVID is where this kind of really took off, where a lot of times when we were in the lockdown, there was no other choice. You couldn't go out to gyms. So online really, really exploded, and it's become incredibly popular. And it is obviously the most benefit to it is it's the most cost effective of them all. You can just go onto YouTube and it's a minefield. You can really find anything that you want in there. There's different types of online coaching. You can also do one-to-one online coaching or in a group environment. As I said, there's unlimited options of what you want to do, when you want to do it. There's no traveling involved. The negative, certainly, for me on online is that I love exercise from a community base. Of being able to talk to people, especially again if you work behind a computer, is getting out the house, going and seeing people. So you can feel a little bit isolated, and then the motivation, you're relying on yourself to motivate to go and train and exercise. We'll talk about it a little bit later on some of the exciting online content that's coming on the Ellie platform next year, where hopefully it will be something that you can add on to maybe your already exercise schedule that you do, and also maybe if it's something that you're starting from scratch, you can start from there. But what we're actually really going to look at is the most important part is just how do we create healthy habits with exercise. So I would always say the biggest negative I have, or talk I have with individuals when they come into the gym is people will approach me when they're motivated, and they'll come into the gym. I've got this quotation, which is actually, it was my brother-in-law who said this, who was getting ready to go on holiday. He said, come Monday, I'm going to go to the gym every day for 2 hours. I'm only going to eat 1,000 calories and I'm going to eliminate all carbohydrates. And that's a common trend or a theme, is that we get motivation when we've got an event coming up. or we feel really low about ourselves and we get angry about ourselves and we just about how we look or feel, and we go, right, instead of trying to create healthier habits, we try and change our lifestyle overnight. And this is destined to fail because it's neither realistic or sustainable. It comes with the best intentions. You know, when we have motivation, it's something which is great. You feel good. You're like, right, I've got the energy to do this. But we can't rely on making sustainable change based off motivation, because motivation will come and go. And truthfully, I'm going to feel a lot more unmotivated to train and to exercise than I am to feel motivated to do so through a year, right? I'll have my ups and downs. What is a non-negotiable to me is my schedule, when I train and what I do. So we don't want to rely on motivation to get started. We don't want to rely on the 1st of January, right? Because come the 9th or 10th of January, where suddenly you're stressed at work, or you've got family commitments, or whatever's happened within your life, motivation can go in a heartbeat, and you forget about it, and you've lost what you had in your head as your positive change that you were going to make. So for me, the big thing is I want to normalize exercise. It's not a big scary thing. There's always a level of where you can get started. It needs to be part of your regular routine, because if we can create exercise into our normal routine, it becomes a habit. And that's the most important thing, is when we look at exercise, we want to look at it as normal as going to work or brushing your teeth or taking the kids to school. It has to just become part of your routine, that you don't even think about what you're doing. And that's what I've got put at the bottom here. And this is going to be our next big thing I'm going to get you to focus on, is setting your minimum and not your maximum. What does that mean? Well, creating a healthy habit, we need to form a plan which is 100% attainable every week. Now, going back 2 slides ago with making those bold changes of trying to change every part of your life, I say to every one of my clients that I sit down with is, I want you to write down what is the minimum that you can do within a week. So regardless of how busy you are not busy for 24 hours a day. There's going to be parts of your day where you have time. Now, we want to decide is, with that time, what are you going to do? Because everyone's minimum is going to look different. And the minimum should be on your busiest week. What can you actually do? I don't want what your optimum or your desired minimum is. I want is what is realistic. Your realistic minimum can be anything from, I'm just going to go out for 20-minute walk a few times a week. And that's fine, because if you can create that as a habit, it's going to be something which is going to become your baseline that you can build off, because you're always going to be doing it. And that's better than having the motivation, trying to train 5 times a week and changing every part of your life, because you'll instantly push back on that and you'll be back to zero. So sitting down and writing down, right through my busiest week, what can I do? Where do I have time? And it doesn't matter how much, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, what am I going to do with that? And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to put that in my diary, make that a part of my fixed habit, because once I've done that for a few months, it's going to be fixed. It's going to be something which is going to be harder for me to change more than anything. So you've always got that baseline, and it's always going to be, something is always better than nothing. So equally, if you're somebody who is naturally been training for years and training maybe 2 times a week, 3 times a week, is maybe looking, right, what am I pushing myself too much in a week? Can I scale it back? Because what I want is, with a baseline, is when you have weeks that you are motivated, is that you maybe sometimes can find extra time that you can add on to that. But your baseline's your baseline, and it's always better than nothing. So creating the why, the next part when I sit down with my clients is trying to separate the differential between having a goal and having your values. because these two can work hand in hand, but initially, the majority of people that will start exercising will have a goal in mind. And that can be obviously very varied. Anything from, I want to lose a stone, I've maybe had too much at Christmas, I'm not happy in my clothes, to I've got a wedding coming up, I've got a holiday coming up. There's always something. But the problem is, if you only start exercising with a goal in mind, what happens after you reach that goal? Well, it's either a pass or fail mentality. Either you give up halfway, or you don't reach your goal, or you do reach your goal and you set your next goal, and then you pass or fail, and you set your next one and your next one and your next one, until you run out of actually motivational goals to push for, to strive for. What I always try and say to people is, because exercise should be part of your normalized routine, there needs to be a reason to why you're doing that. And that's where your values come, because if you hold your own values to what you do, you're much more likely to keep it and stay with it. Your values are something which is going to be important to you, and it will give you the why you're doing something. And that stops the extremes, it stops the fluctuations. It's something which is grounded and rooted to the individual. But your values are going to be different from person to person. So once I get somebody to write down what their minimum is that they can do, the next thing I want them to do is write the why. And your values, as I said, it's different from person to person. It can be anything from that that you want to play with your grandkids when maybe your children have grown up, and you don't want to be that person that's living in chronic pain. You've got to find something where you can feed into, or maybe your self-esteem is low and you want to feel more confident in yourself. Or for me, I can tell you my values straight away is I started exercising like every other person. I wanted the physical benefits. What's quickly changed over my life is it helps me up here. It massively helps my mental health, and I tend to be a massive overthinker, and somebody that's generally quite high energy all the time, but I have big crashes. When I exercise, it helps calm my brain and keeps me even keeled, and I'll sleep better, which means I'm going to have better energy levels the next day. I'll make better decisions. I'm not going to burn out, and I'm going to have energy to give to other people. That's the values to why I exercise. That's not necessarily saying that will be your values, but there will be something of why you want to start exercising. It's just trying to differentiate between a goal and a value. And the goals for me are great tools to use if you already have your values attached to your exercise. They can be your waypoints. So if you have your minimum base level and you're making good progress and you're enjoying it, what we can look at there is, okay, I'm getting married in February. So I might just think to myself, well, I'm already training 3 times a week. I'm just going to increase that and add another session. I'm just going to give me a little bit extra motivation in the short term that I can push. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to completely fall off after the wedding, because training is part of my daily habit. So what we kind of overview from what I'm talking about here is, I kind of said in the last webinar, I want you to sit down and write and just imagine that you can do this right now with me. That's not a problem. But if you've got a pen and papers, just jot down what are your values, to why you want to get started, and what's important to you. You don't have to share that with me at all, but have a little think about it. And you don't have to do it right now. You can think about it overnight, and then write down what your minimum goals, or what your minimum, level of exercise that you can do daily or weekly, I should say. And if you're somebody that doesn't exercise, you can just, start with some walks, just, if between your lunch break or after work, after dinner, just trying to fit in just a leisurely 20-minute walk, something which you're just moving, getting away from the computer for a little while. I'd certainly say to do your own research on the local facilities. If you are wanting to look at some of the options that I presented earlier, I'm somebody who will never argue what types of exercise that you do. What I would say to you is you've got to find, I think, something first that you enjoy, maybe that you feel part of, something that you feel comfortable doing. That's a really important element. Generally, I would say to feeling confident comes from being surrounded by people that are positive and are lifting you up and trying to help you. Certainly remember that most of these places, the gyms, whether it's small groups or personal training, you can always go along and just trial it and just see what happens. And if you don't like it, don't go back. Try somewhere else. But you will find somewhere where you're like, you feel a bit more relaxed and feel like you can have a bit of trust in what you're doing and build your own confidence up. But you need to start with just creating your own fundamentals and really understand that exercise is a really important element, but doesn't have to be a scary element of your daily lives and routines. So, as I said before, we'll look at 2025 going ahead, and we're going to have some really exciting content coming out the LA platform, which I'll be part of. So I hope you enjoyed it today. We're going to look at this is just already covering my last slide there as well.